Hey there, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Total Ramblings. Doctor Who's back on the TV. Yes, I've literally just finished watching episode 1 of the new series of Doctor Who, The Robot Revolution. At the time I'm speaking, it's just gone midday on Saturday, the 12th of April 2025, and I've just watched the episode on iPlayer. I'm going to say right up front, I am going to be going to the plot details in depth. So if you haven't seen it yet, or if you don't want to be spoiled, there are going to be some massive spoilers here. But these are like my immediate off-the-cuff reactions and thoughts. I've literally just finished watching the episode, haven't really had time to think about it. So this, as I say, this is just off the cuff. So we start off with a caption that we are 17 years ago, and we have a lady named Belinda who's on a date with a guy named Alan. And Alan has done one of those things where he's named a star after somebody. Now, I always thought naming stars was a little bit kind of funny because, you know, in like 10 billion years' time, if humanity has ever spread to the stars, are we going to honour those names, you know, or this is the star Andrew Summersgill? I don't really think so. And I don't actually think these things hold much weight. And it's interesting to kind of see, you know, something like that kind of explored. Basically, he has named a particular distant star after her, Miss Belinda Chandra. And Miss Belinda Chandra. She doesn't like the term miss, but whatever. Anyway, Belinda, she's a nurse working in what looks like an emergency unit of the NHS, something like that. Something I've unfortunately had all too much experience of lately with members of my family, but never mind. Anyway, the doctor's come looking for her, and the doctor's wearing a kilt, which is kind of interesting. I don't want to say too much about that, but it's an interesting kilt. It looks like a cut up business suit as a kilt. But anyway, there we go. But he kind of just misses her because Miss Belinda Chandra, Belinda, played by Varada Setu, very fine actress. We've seen before in an episode of Doctor Who, and we'll come to that in a minute. Basically, this gigantic Tintin-like sort of retro futuristic spaceship lands in her garden, and the next thing you know, we've got robots smashing through her wall. Again, the robots look kind of retro future. They're very bulky. They reminded me a lot of the Masters as depicted in the second series of the Tripods from the 1980s, in that they've got a kind of, their torso kind of bulks up, and they've got like a face on the front of the torso. They don't really have a separate head, but the faces are quite cool because they can show different images, emotions. They remind me a little bit of like the robots that we saw in a Capaldi episode. I can't remember the name of it, where they had a screen, but this is more kind of mechanical. And they kill a cat. Admittedly, the death was very quick, but they killed a cat. Yeah, that's not very, don't like killing the cat. Anyway, they refer to Belinda as Your Majesty, and they take her back to their planet. The system named Miss Belinda Chandra. We see Miss Flood in the garden, Anita Dobson, who doesn't really seem terribly fazed by the fact there's a giant spaceship in the garden and there are giant robots taking her neighbour away. And she says bye-bye. And the doctor, as I say, just misses Belinda. And Miss Flood says, breaks the fourth wall, says, "You ain't seen me." So, you know, is she meant to be there? Is she following people around? Is it all a bit timey-wimey? We'll come back to that in a minute. Or is she just not meant to be on Earth? We don't know. Anyway, as Belinda is being taken to the robots' planet, we have a bit of time skippiness kind of stuff. And we end up on the planet, Miss Belinda Chandra 1, and they are called Miss Belinda Chandra robots. And the city is Miss Belinda Chandraville, and they're using Miss Belinda Chandra bombs to kill rebels who are fighting against them. The city looks a bit Dalek-y to me, but then again, futuristic cities, I guess they all kind of look the same, really. But there is some kind of minor skirmish going on. And essentially what we've got is a situation where the robots are in charge. The robots and the Miss Belinda Chandra kind used to live in harmony on Miss Belinda Chandra 1 in Miss Belinda Chandraville. And then the robots, something changed, and about 10 years ago they took over. We're introduced to a lady named Sasha 55, who is a friend of the Doctor. And the Doctor has smuggled himself into a welcoming committee for Belinda, who is being welcomed as the queen of this world. And essentially, the aim is that she's going to marry the great AI generator, which is this very scary looking machine. Kind of reminded me a little bit of the Great Architect from the Doctor Who story Paradise Towers, but and they're going to weld together. There's kind of I thought there was I picked up what I thought was a Superman 3 reference. There's a particularly horrific bit for a kids film in Superman 3 where a lady is pulled into this supercomputer that's been created to kill Superman, and kind of gets plated with metal on her face and hands and kind of becomes a cyborg. And there's like an animation of that, and in fact we come back to that a bit later. I just kind of thought that reminded me of that particular sequence in Superman 3. Anyway, the Doctor's giving Belinda a coded message because it turns out that the robots can't hear every 9th word. Anyway, we end up with a big sort of battle between the rebels, the welcoming committee, which is full of rebels with guns, and the robots. Some absolutely fantastic body vaporization effects. There's a lot of money on screen here. I think we're seeing Disney money on screen here. Might come back to the Disney aspect in just a minute. But anyway, Sasha 55, who apparently the Doctor's been working with for 6 months, and has promised her that he can come on adventures with him, she dies. And after their escape, picking up a Polish robot on the way by mistake, we see a bit of emotion from the Doctor. The Doctor cries. We have quite, again, we're picking up from like the last series of Doctor Who, this incarnation of the Doctor. It's quite emotional, wears his heart on his sleeve, quite vulnerable. It would be a cliche to say it's a bit sort of like Peter Davison, but I mean, that's the situation really. That kind of incarnation of the Doctor was also quite vulnerable, and I think that's what we're seeing here. We have a very nice sequence with some X-ray blankets, and we're kind of, reintroduced to the concept that the Doctor is an alien. As is everyone on this world, actually, apart from obviously Belinda herself. The Doctor has 2 hearts, and there's something weird going on because Belinda has this certificate that she was given, to say, hey, you this star's named after you. And the AI generator seems to have the same certificate, but it's much older. And it's literally the same certificate. It's got the same RIP. It's the same certificate, but older. The Doctor is explaining this to Belinda and says, quite a funny line, says, it's a bit timey-wimey. She says, timey-wimey? Am I 6? Which is, I quite like that. But anyway, we seem to have a situation where this certificate is in 2 places at the same time, having crossed over in time. We've got the now version of the certificate and a future version of the certificate. And essentially, it's implied that, if these things touch, there's going to be a massive explosion. And I'm wondering if this is kind of like a reference to maybe something like... No, it's not the Blinovitch limitation effect, because that is not being able to go back to the same time more than once. Or although that's kind of out the window since the new series. But essentially, we've kind of seen this before in Doctor Who, where, for example, in the episode Mordrin Undead, two versions of the Brigadier from different time periods touched each other, and there was some kind of massive explosion. Anyway, Belinda sabotages the polish robot and basically, calls the robots in because she kind of feels that this is all her fault, and kind of wants it over and done with. And then we are introduced to the great AI generator, and it's not AI, it's Al. It's Alan. It's the guy who bought her the certificate. And my immediate thought, and in fact it's specifically referenced later, my immediate thought is, oh my God, he's an incel. Because essentially, Belinda rejected him all those years ago. Turns out he's a bit of a control freak. Absolute nut job, in fact. And my immediate thought was, they're having a go at incels. And in fact, yes, we specifically said later on, it's Planet of the Incels. So, basically, we're having a go at coercive control here, because what's happened is, while Belinda was being taken to the robot's planet and we had the time jump, she kind of said, it's Alan. Alan Budd gave me the certificate, go and get him. And it turns out the robots did go and get him 10 years ago. They arrived before. It's all a bit timey-wimey. They arrived before, and he ended up taking over control. And this is why there's been this kind of civil war for the last 10 years, because he wants everything to be in his kind of his way of thinking. It's interesting when he gets picked up by the robots. You can see him playing some kind of first-person shooter, and I don't know if we're having a go at gamers here, if we're having a go at people who quote live in their mum's basements, that kind of thing. I don't know. I mean, talk about a message, right? I mean, if anyone wanted Doctor Who to stop being, sort of giving us a message, well, they're going to be out of luck here, really, aren't they? Because there's definitely a message here, and it's this time to have a go at the incels. Anyway, Belinda gets hold of her copy of the certificate and matches it with Al's copy of the certificate, and there's a big kaboom, which the Doctor kind of intervenes to kind of take the kaboom, if you like. And Alan becomes a sperm and an egg on the floor, and the polish robot picks him up. Bit weird. Not really quite sure what I make of that reference, to be honest. I mean, bit explicit, not explicit, but you know what I mean. It's kind of a bit specific is the word perhaps I'm looking for. Anyway, Belinda wants to get back to the 24th of May, 2025, which is in my future at the time I record this, and is probably well in your past by the time you watch this. I don't know when you're going to watch this. But of course he says, I've kind of met you before. I've met a future version, or I've met one of your descendants, Mundy Flynn, who's meant to be in the 51st century. She's a kind of precise visual and genetic match. And the Doctor's thinking, is there a sort of mystery here? And, so of course, we're getting flashbacks to Clara here, who was kind of in multiple time streams at the same time. Anyway, they can't get back to the 24th of May because they keep bouncing off the return date. And in fact, they end up in empty space halfway between the planet and Earth. The cloister bell starts to sound, and of course this is our mystery now for this particular season of Doctor Who, as we see the TARDIS disappears and we see a taxi from London, one of the pyramids, Statue of Liberty, Eiffel Tower, the certificate from Belinda, all floating through space as if the Earth's been destroyed. So what are my thoughts on this episode? Very, very expensive looking episode, I have to say. The money is on the screen, right? And I also have to say, I think this is a much better opening episode than Space Babies from last year. I didn't dislike Space Babies, but it was a bit weird. Perhaps maybe shouldn't have been an opening episode. As an opening episode, this is like, wow, in your face, right? I love the retro sort of robots with their massive chunky guns. Again, sort of chunky robots are kind of like something we've seen before in modern Doctor Who. Like I say, the planet looked a bit Dalek-y to me, but I mean, I'm not suggesting there's a Dalek connection, but you never know. I like Ncuti Gatwa, brilliant Doctor. Has got the energy and the drive and the curiousness and the enthusiasm. Varada Setu, very much her own person. Belinda, very much her own character. Doesn't necessarily, she objects to the Doctor taking her DNA without permission. I think again we're looking at modern Doctor Who here, and we're looking at the sort of we're looking at this issue of sort of what's the word, owning your own data and being your own person and not being subjected to other people's whims and fancies and what have you. But yeah, a very expensive episode. I imagine I don't know whether they're all going to look this expensive, but it was colourful. It was bright. For once, I didn't think the music overblew the talking. At no point did I struggle to understand what the characters were saying. That's been a problem in previous Doctor Who episodes, and indeed many previous sort of modern dramas at the moment. We always seem to have overblown music. And all in all, I think this was an excellent start to the series. Some interesting mysteries thrown up. There's one thing that I do slightly object to, and that is that modern Doctor Who, in classic Doctor Who, of which I'm a big fan, you'd have a problem on a planet or a civilization, the Doctor would turn up, solve the problem and go away, and the story was about the problem. Modern Doctor Who, it's more about the Doctor and his companion, and the companion is always the most important person in the universe, and the companion is often outshines the Doctor, and we've got a little bit of that here because there's a mystery around the companion, not a mystery around the universe. It's a mystery around the companion, and that seems to be a modern trend. Well, it seems to be a trend ever since Doctor Who started 20 years ago, modern Who, in that, it's all about our main characters more than it is the story in some instances. And I just wish we'd get back to a little bit more traditional telling of Doctor Who. I think this episode was more about the mystery of the story than it was about the companion, but we've still got an aspect of that. I don't know if I'm making any sense here. Doctor Who shouldn't have to be about the Doctor, as strange as that may sound. It should be about exploring other aspects. And I guess incel is, one of those modern day sort of things, as was things like, the miners' strike and that kind of thing when we had episodes like The Green Death. I'm rambling on now, but this is Total Ramblings, and that is the point of this. And I think what I'm saying is I could do without mysteries focusing around our central characters, is what I'm saying. And that's all I'm going to say on the matter. But on the whole, I really enjoyed this episode. I thought it was really good. As I say, this is an immediate off-the-cuff review. I haven't had time to think about it. Whenever I do a Doctor Who episode review of a new episode, I immediately record a video straight after. I might sit down, and while I'm editing this, I might start thinking of some problems. Who knows? But at the moment, I think it was really good. And I appreciate the fact that the episode's not released at midnight. I mean, I got up relatively early this morning and I've watched it now, and it's a decent time. So yes, I'm going to shut up now. I don't have a script. I just have notes that I wrote during the episode. So, right. Thank you very much for watching this episode of Total Ramblings. Hopefully I will see you again soon. We've got the next series of Andor coming up from Star Wars, which I will also be reviewing, as well as, of course, future Doctor Who reviews and general episodes about life, the universe and everything. I'll see you next time. Bye.